All right, welcome everybody. Today I have the beginnings of the meat and potatoes of my Colt collection. It would be my oldest currently that I own, Colt government model. It was manufactured in 1926, so it was a couple years after the A1 features started to come out. And you'll hear me refer to my 1911s that I have, mostly my Colts mostly as government models because they are all civilian sold guns. None of them are military guns. I did a video on an Ithaca 1911 A1 that I own a while back. That's the only military Colt 1911 that I own. But anyway, this is the first of a few government models that I own. Like I said, the government models were made for civilian sales. This one was made in 1926. The differences between the 1911 and the government model, basically Colt in-house knew all these pistols as the Model O. If they were destined for military use, they got roll stamped with the 1911 A1 roll stamps, and if they were going to civilian sales, they were marked with the government model, which is marked right here above the serial number. Another couple slight differences between the two is the serial number on the commercial guns has a prefix of C, and the military ones have a prefix of NO for number. So when you start getting into the post-war guns, they start moving the suffix or the prefix C to a suffix, like shown here. This is a 1951 Colt. You'll see the C is moved behind the serial number. They did that probably in the late 40s, I want to say. Anyway, another difference is they're, in my opinion, they're a little bit finer finished than the military guns, particularly the latter ones in the 30s and 40s, obviously. But the very early military 1911s were finished just as well as the commercial guns, but they started during World War II. They didn't polish them quite as well, and that's when you start getting into the Black Army guns and all that. But for all intents and purposes, the main differences are markings, the degree of finish, polishing, and the chamber was polished on the commercial guns, where in the military guns they're not. So if you see a barrel that's not polished and what's claimed to be an original government model, there's a good chance it has a military barrel in it. And the barrels in these guns were replaced out quite a bit back in the day. Commercial or corrosive ammo was still heavily in use. I don't think the military got away from corrosive .45 ammo until the 50s, but so finding, pristine barrels in these guns, particularly ones that have been shot quite a bit, they're more often than not, they're not in pristine condition. Some of them are even sewer pipes, but you'd be surprised how well they'll still shoot. Anyway, moving on. The other things we can get into are this is a pre-war gun, which I have several of these pre-war government models. This one here is far from mint condition, and I have shot it, probably a couple hundred rounds. It has some significant scratching on the slide here. I don't know what that would have been from. It's on a weird spot, like something was moving back and forth, maybe a holster or something with a rivet or something like that. But other than that, it's got pretty decent original finish on it. The pre-war guns have a very distinctive bluish black, bluish gray finish. This is more in the bluish black variety. I believe it to be an original finished gun. There's no signs of polishing or redip. It has a lot of tiny little fine scratches and whatnot. A little bit of holster wear. In my eyes, this is an original finished gun. I believe it to be, and you can't mistake pre-war Colt bluing. It is beautiful, even in its worn forms. Like stated, I believe this gun to be all original. It did come with a Sistema mag when I got it. This one here, I did find a two-tone unmarked mag, which I believe to be correct for this era gun to go with it. I picked this gun up off of a gun broker probably about 10 years ago. These are always going up in value. It's hard to find these for reasonable prices, and even when you do, a lot of them that you'll find have been messed with, or the parts aren't right, and people are asking way too much money for a lot of them. The guns have been reblued, have the wrong grips, or missing a lot of the small parts, or they're changed out over the years. To find an original, all original gun in a government model that's not been messed with in mint condition, you're talking probably close to 5 figures by now, I would imagine. This one here, I picked it up for, I want to say, around $1,400 10 years ago. I suspect I could make some money on it now. This one is all original, like I said, original finish, far from perfect finish, obviously, but it does have all the original parts, and we can kind of go over the different original parts that you would be looking for on a pre-war gun here. So all the pre-war guns before World War II are going to have the small tab safety, and they're going to have checkering on all the small parts as opposed to serration. So you got full checkering on the slide stop, the small tab safety. It's got the A1. Like I said, this one's made in 1926, so it's got the arch mainspring housing and the short trigger, and they're both checkered also. See that real good? Check and make sure, verify here, which I already done before the video, but just to make you two safety hacks happy. This one does have the original grips, which you can tell the original grips, which sometimes it's hard if you're buying them online. They should have 28 lines between screws. So I've gotten to the point where I've seen enough of them where they're pretty easy to spot if they're not correct, but it does take some time, and these are the things you want to be looking for. A lot of times they have a gun online that's not taken apart. You have to look at wide spur hammer, fully checkered, small tab safety, slide stop checkered, checkering. Just remember, checkering is what you want to look for. Polished chamber, and there's going to be different markings throughout the years. The Colt caliber automatic 45 on the slide, I'd have to go back through my notes, but I believe that was used from the late teens until a little bit after World War II. And the 2-roll address stamp was used, I'm pretty sure that was around 1919, 1920. And there were some slides that were still being assembled after World War II that were that style. But this is basically what you're looking for on stampings if you're buying a gun that's anywhere from, say, 1920 to World War II, basically. You want to look for consistency between the serial numbers and the markings when you get into the World War I guns. In the very early guns, they're stamped government model right here. It's just, there's a lot of things to be looking for. So that's kind of like a layman's beginner starting version of what you should be looking for on these. We'll get into the breakdown on this and show you some more stampings and stuff that to be looking for. So typical 1911, like all the other ones. Make sure the gun is clear, which we already did. Magazine's out. I always start here. Press my plunger tube down, rotate the barrel bushing clockwise. Watch that you don't eject this plunger tube out because it will come flying out. You got to hold it down. You're going to take that. Let me zoom out just a little bit. Okay. And then you're going to rotate the barrel bushing around the other way, the opposite direction, and it will come out. Set that there. I usually turn the gun this way. The early guns are going to have a tab on the inside of the plunger there that screws onto the end of the spring. Some of the later guns don't have that. All right, sorry about that. The dog wanted out. Okay, so we've released the recoil spring pressure, taken out the barrel bushing. The next step is to pull the slide back, and we're going to line up this little mark right here with the back end to the very rear of the slide stop right there. Then you're going to push this button, which is the end of the slide stop, and you're going to pop it out of there. And that will slide right out like so. And then the slide just pulls off. Then you have your frame assembly, and your recoil spring and all that will slide out of the slide. Then you flip your barrel link forward like so, there, and then the barrel will come out the end of the slide. This particular barrel is stamped with a P on the bottom, which is correct for this era gun. I see a tiny little P there. I actually can't see it with the naked eye good enough to make it out as being a P, but I will look at it through the camera and it's obvious. Original barrel, you know, has got, the wear marks on the barrel for these pre-war guns is, in my eyes, it's distinctive. So that this you can see where they polished down on the chamber all the way around, and that little P mark is the only marking on this barrel. Well, I take that back. There is a little L there. I don't know what that is, if that is an L, but it does have the P mark, which is correct for the barrel for this gun. And getting into the slide and all that. Now, another thing you can't really tell when you buy these online, the pre-war guns, and this is a big one here, is the slides are numbered to the frames. So we're going to take a little, and this is another thing you got to be careful with. We push the firing pin in here, and we'll slide the firing pin stop down a little bit, not all the way, just enough. Put your finger over that right there, and you pull that firing pin stop out. And then your firing pin and spring will come out. And then there in the back, see if I can get good light on it, you will see a serial number in there. And that serial number needs to match the frame. And if it doesn't match the frame, it was not how it came from the factory. They got swapped out at some time. And I know I've seen guns online that have been a number or two apart, and I would say there's a good bet that came from the factory that way. But for the most part, you're going to see matching numbers on these guns. So anyway, I went over all the checkering on the safety. Get a better look here on the safety tab. Got the checkering on it. The frames on these, and there might be some exceptions to these rules, but the frames are marked S for sales. I believe the ones for government were marked with a G, if I'm not mistaken. And the military guns will have a whole series of inspector stamps and ordnance bombs and stuff on them that depending on who they were made by and who they're inspected by, they'll have another whole series of markings on them. So good shot of the checkered wide spur hammer. It has the checkered mainspring housing, which is arched, which would have been correct after around 1924. Beforehand, these would have had the A1 features, which wouldn't have the scallops behind the trigger. It would have had a flat mainspring housing and a long trigger on it. The hammers, in the early guns, the hammers change a little bit in length and stuff like that, but for the most part, they're all a wide spur checkered hammer. You still are getting into the nuances of the early guns and actually throughout the whole production. This one here, actually, I do believe this is not the correct mag release. I believe this should be checkered also. All my other ones are. This one's serrated. So this is out of a later gun, or it's an aftermarket part. That is something I just remembered doing this video. I still got to look for one of those, because that's the only thing that's not correct in this gun as far as I know. Let's see, talked about that. The high polish bluing. So, you know, this gun is a decent example, but the pre-war guns are going to be high polished over the whole surface of the gun. If you get a gun that's got all the pre-war features, but doesn't have a high polished blue, it's more of a matte blue, it's probably not correct in some way or another. We'll show that 51 model I had here earlier. The sides are fairly high polished, but you get to the top, it's more of a matte finish. The bottom's more of a matte finish, but the slide flats and frame sides are high polished. Everything else is a matte, more of a matte, less polished blue. So that's something to look for, differences between pre-war, post-war. Anyway, we'll get back to reassembly on this one. So we're going to take the slide. We got the firing pin spring and firing pin. I'm going to set that in there like so. I'm going to slide my slide stop. A little tricky, but I slide it in there until I catch the edge of the firing pin like that. And I'll take something like a ballpoint pen, push the firing pin in, and then slide the slide stop the rest of the way up to where there you go, that's back together. And we're going to take the barrel with the barrel length forward, slide it into the end of the slide, and then I'm going to take my recoil spring, slide it in with the half moon part facing up on the barrel. I'm going to flip my link back, push that all the way back like that. Then I'm going to take a slide, put it on the rails of the frame, and I'm going to slide it back easily. Nice and easy. You might need a little bit of resistance when you hit the disconnector. Not a big deal. And I'm going to put that little semicircle directly above, right there where the access point is for the slide stop. Now, this is a critical, this is where the idiot mark comes into play. This gun has some finish loss under the slide stop, but believe it or not, as old as it is, it does not have an idiot mark on it, and I don't want to be the first one to give it one. But whenever you line this up, you want to make sure your barrel link is lined up, and make sure your barrel's back all the way in the slide first, which is what I didn't do there. And when you get that lined up there, you want to make sure your barrel link is lined up with the hole. You can see me moving it back and forth there. Or you catch it there. My barrel length is lined up right there. And I'm going to slide this in. And there's a little bevel right there on the slide stop that you want to put directly over the plunger that retains that. So that way all you have to do is push it straight in like that. Now, my plunger tube is weakly sprung, so that was pretty easy. What I usually do is take a little flat piece of plastic and push down on it. A lot of people will push these down where they're angled down and then force them up, and it scratches the frame right there. So that's something to watch for. I'm going to push the slide forward and over. Take your barrel bushing, put it over the barrel, not the spring. Make sure the little notch there lines up with the bottom of the, in between the barrel and the spring opening. Then you're going to turn the bushing all the way clockwise as far as it'll go, about like that. Take your spring recoil plunger there, push it all the way in, and then turn your bushing. Now this is where you have a situation. I just caught the edge of the bushing there, okay? Or caught the edge of the bushing on the plunger tube, or whatever you want to call it. For some reason I have a problem remembering what the name of this part is. But anyway, I caught the edge of it there. These have a tendency to go sailing, so be careful. Just going to push that in a little bit the rest of the way and turn it. And there it is, gun's back together. Anyway, I've gone over kind of the gist of the difference between the government models and the 1911s and 1911A1s, and there's a lot more details in that I did not cover, and I'm being kind of generic with my descriptions on these, but that's kind of a starting primer for things to look at. When you're buying a gun like this, make sure you ask a lot of questions. These guns have been through a lot of hands over the years, and a lot of people have messed with them, lost parts, re-blued them. They thought they were doing the right thing, but to me, an original gun is something to be cherished, and you should really not consider doing a restoration on a gun like this. It's only original once. Now, I could say you reach a point eventually that a gun could be so bad that it might be worth it, but you're usually going to end up with more money in it than it's worth. But anyway, that's a quick rundown of my oldest government model that I currently own. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or corrections, please feel free to let me know. If I messed something up or misspoke on something, I appreciate you letting me know, and I hope you all have a good day.